From a staggering difference in their fighting style, to how Pereira might avenge his coach's defeat against Jamal Hill with the title on the line. Here's who'll win between Alex Pereira and Jan Blachowicz at UFC 291. Despite his superior kickboxing skills, Pereira might just be the underdog going into the fight. When Pereira first joined the promotion, he took the whole middleweight division by storm, staking his claim with 3 legendary wins that earned him a shot at UFC Gold. In his first UFC championship fight, he took on his rival, Israel Adesanya, and shocked the fight world with a TKO win in the 5th round. And even though he failed to defend his title in the rematch, Pereira managed to spread fear throughout the UFC with his explosive knockout power. But whether that's going to be enough in the light heavyweight division against a beast like Jan Blachowicz is still a huge question. For starters, the Polish mixed martial artist has a completely different fighting style, which might be the perfect counter to Pereira's kickboxing. Because when you think about it, Izzy and Alex have a relatively similar fighting style. And the fact that Jan was able to take out the last stylebender with ease at UFC 259 just goes to show how easy it is for him to counter kickboxers. Jan is an expert in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so he relies heavily on his opponent's aggression, countering with some of the most deadliest grappling and submission holds fans have ever seen. And when you look at it that way, Pereira isn't exactly the strongest guy on the ground. He prefers to stand up and strike his way out of trouble, but when you're going up against an opponent who thrives on the octagon floor, a single takedown could mean instant defeat for Pereira. Believe it or not, even the middleweight champ thinks that's how their fight will play out. After all, Adesanya's prediction has to be the most credible one out there, since he's fought both of them. And while he thinks it'll be a tough battle with both opponents giving each other hell, at the end of the day, Alex will suffer the same fate he did, predicting Jan will take the fight to the ground and dominate him with his grappling. See, the Polish fighter might entertain a striking match to get a feel for his opponent's power before he starts building up his dangerous forward pressure. But once he has Alex up against the cage, Jan will waste no time taking him to the ground and digging his head out with some back-to-back brutal hammer fists. Even though Alex is the clear underdog going into the matchup, it doesn't mean he can't walk out the winner, because he's been training a lot and working exceptionally hard on his ground game to prepare for all the takedown attempts Jan will hit him with. And who knows, seeing how much power his punches pack, if he manages to clip Jan with one good strike, it could change the whole momentum of the fight. Either way, Izzy is positive Jan will get his hand raised at the end of the fight, but Pereira believes otherwise. Instead of caving to public opinion, the Brazilian claims he has a special weapon up his sleeve. And what might that weapon be? Well, it's actually his coach, UFC legend Glover Teixeira, who also happens to be Jan's former opponent. The two traded fists with each other back at UFC 267, with Glover dethroning the Polish powerhouse with a dominant second-round submission. And even though Teixeira had a much better ground game than Pereira, Pereira claims training with him will give him the edge, since he has the perfect blueprint to beat him. Sure, it helps to have Glover by his side, but unless his coach can transfer his skills to the Brazilian, it's not going to make much of a difference. Sure, having Teixeira's insight will help him prepare for the Polish powerhouse, but facing Jan's deadly clutches in the flesh is a completely different thing. Honestly, Pereira's best bet would be to go in for the kill instead of holding back and stuffing takedowns. Because the longer the fight goes on, the higher the possibility of Jan taking the fight to the ground. So if he can take him out while the fight is still on its feet, he might actually have a chance. But there's a significant change in his attitude this time around, since he knows just how dangerous Jan is. He isn't talking smack as usual, instead appreciating the 40-year-old for his brilliance inside the octagon. On the other hand, Jan is way more confident and promises to send Pereira back to the middleweight division. Since Jan has fought some of the best guys at the promotion, he knows what to expect from a striker like Pereira. And what's interesting is, when Alex lost to Izzy in their second fight, there were rumors going around about him moving up a division to take on bigger fighters. So when Jan heard that, he specifically asked Dana White to give him the former Brazilian champion. Jan still acknowledged that it's going to be a tough battle, because even though he outshines him in the wrestling department, Pereira's left hand has the iconic touch of death. So regardless of how good Jan is at maintaining the distance, if he gets caught with just one of his strikes, recovering from it will be extremely challenging. But that's why he took on a fight, with such a high-risk, high-reward situation. because the reward in this case is a shot at the light heavyweight title. It's obvious that Jan doesn't have a lot of fights left in him. I mean, the guy's 40 years old now, going way past his prime, and if he's able to secure the win at UFC 291, a title fight is almost guaranteed. But Jan might have his hopes too high, because Jamal has several other options, like Yuri Prochazka and Magomed Ankalaev too. But while UFC President Dana White hasn't guaranteed either of these fighters a title fight, he has, however, claimed that Alex is going to be in a very good position if he wins. So it makes sense why Pereira would take such a challenging fight. But honestly, it's impossible to guarantee a title fight when there's so much competition in the division. Since this is Pereira's light heavyweight debut though, especially against an absolute legend like Jan, a win would be extraordinary, significantly raising his chances for a championship fight with Jamal Hill. While talking about the matchup, Dana mentioned how a win over Jan would put anyone in the driver's seat because he's just that good. I mean, even at 40 years old, he's manhandling his opponents and putting on some of the best performances of his career. But it's still disappointing to see how Alex has a higher chance at a title shot than Jan if he wins the fight. Well, those are the wicked ways of the UFC, so only time will tell what the future holds for the winner of the fight. But either way, Pereira will really have to up his game if he wishes to make his mark on the division. On the other hand, there's actually some surprising history between Pereira and Jamal. See, Glover is Pereira's mentor, and since Hill beat him at UFC 283, Alex has been aching to avenge his coach. And when the result of the fight was being announced, Pereira was in the octagon, sizing Hill up, eager to get his hands on him. Plus, Jamal has already taken shots at the Brazilian, claiming his punching power won't be of much use in the heavier division. The champ thinks middleweight fighters are specialists, practically calling them one-trick ponies, and believes that in the light heavyweight division, fighters need to be more rounded to battle all sorts of threats. Since Pereira happens to be a specialist kickboxer, going up against natural grapplers will be a daunting task. And aside from Jamal, Anthony Smith predicted Alex losing to Jan, as well as Hill if it ever comes to that. But it's not like he'll be completely useless at 205 pounds. Smith believes Alex can achieve a lot, but then again, when it comes to the top-ranked fighters, he's going to have a much harder time, regardless of his power. It seems like a stretch to think of the two fighting already, but Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill is a super fight just waiting to happen. And with Dana being the money-obsessed businessman he is, he knows it's a way more exciting matchup than letting Jan have a crack at the title again. But before that, Alex will still have to go through Blachowicz at UFC 291, and by the looks of it, Jan might just knock his lights out. So there you have it, fight fans, from how Pereira might avenge his coach's defeat against Jamal Hill with the title on the line, to a staggering difference between his and Jan's fighting styles. That's everything about Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz.